grows and grows. And so where we come in is we have relationships with over 250 technology partners, and we aggregate all of those services. They go on our paper. We invoice all of these things. And we are a first line of support for them, right? So our company has been around, it's privately held for 27 years. We're the 5th largest aggregator. We're US based. I operate out of our headquarters in New Jersey. And I think it's important to note that 85% of our headcount are for support, right? This is what we do. And this is, some people do business with just because the support is better than going to carriers direct. So just to kind of give you an idea of who we are, where we came from, right? We're a financially stable and growing rapidly company, and we've been around for some time, and we're privately held. These are kind of this is the overview of the services that we provide, right? This is the more and more life goes over IP, right? Voice over IP. What we found is if you have an issue and you have separate providers, all of them, you're going to get into a finger pointing game of which you're in the middle of it. And it's not a great experience. So I'll tell you, anytime a VoIP service goes down, the internet people are telling you it's the hardware, and the hardware people it's telling you, and it's a very challenging market, right? And so we try to take out as much of that as possible. And so we have a real high level of accountability. The services that we do, right, are everything from traditional connectivity, right? Internet over anything, whether that's coax, shared fiber, dedicated fiber, wireless, obviously, fixed wireless, all of those services. Same with voice, right? Traditional voice, although, right, what we're talking about now is we're seeing that sort of on the diminishing, right? But we still do it. We push obviously towards voice over IP, and we've got different platforms for that. We do security, we do managed services, SD-WAN, managed devices across the board, and then all of that kind of needs to be professionally installed, white glove installation, all of those services, right? So that kind of uniquely qualifies us for POTS transformation. Because we built our book of business largely on POTS migrations. We said what's an underserved market, right? And a lot of that was POTS lines. And so we did massive migration projects in our early years. And as this need to transform, I'm sure many of you are on this call because you've gotten a decommission notice or a price increase, right? The price increase notices are no longer subtle. We're seeing them as very significant. And so we had to come up with a plan internally because so many of our customers, we were the ones who were having to send out these letters, right? So we have a multi-tiered approach to POTS transformation, right? It's kind of the UCaaS, we've got PTAS, right? POTS transformation as a service. So there are, four basic ways that we're doing it. One is POTS in a box, which is the UMA AirDial and the SpectroTel branded POTS in a box. This is the one that we're going to get into a little bit more detail. POTS over broadband is a similar application. It's specific to a few carriers, and we'll go over those ones. And then the SIP suite of products, which is a little bit more geared towards voice, right? So that's why when we talk about POTS migration, the important part is to have the conversation about what are these lines being used for. That way we can, oops, sorry, did I do that? There we go. That way we can match the right service to the product set that you're getting, okay? So each individual POTS transformation product fits in to what it's being used for an underlying service, right? The voice line aspect, right? Easy. You can use any one of these applications. And sort of as we get away from voice, SIP no longer becomes an alternative. And then we're looking at POTS over broadband, which is a great fit in many cases. But again, if you see here, it's limited to the availability of these select carriers, right? POTS in a box fills in the gap across the board. It can be used for voice. It can be used for specialty lines. It doesn't have to be in the marketplace of one of the underlying coax providers. And it is not, it doesn't require a hard lined connection if you don't want it to. So this is where we're kind of drill in to the specific box, right? So this is, we're going to talk about the data remote box, which is our kind of signature platform. This is the back of the box, which is always exciting. So it comes in two sizes. There's a box, the 9010 for 2-line capacity and the 9090 for 8-line capacity, right? And so the applications are across the board. You can use it for any of the specialty lines. And whenever we call them specialty lines, we're talking alarm, elevator, fax, meter, right? Those point of sale, right? Any of those types of applications. And there's two ways, there's three ways we can transport these calls, right? So the first one is if you have a hardwired connection in the office or the building, right? And we can use that hardwire, that wired connection. We will transport the calls over that, right? Secondarily, we could use the hardwired connection with an LTE wireless failover, right? So if there's an outage, you lose your BIOS goes down, it will fail over to an LTE backup with a pooled data plan. And the third way is if there's no access to a wired connection, right? It's a remote area, or you've got some wiring issue where it's in a basement or whatever. You can use the LTE wireless connection as the primary, right? So all of these things are kind of site specific. These are things that you and I and the folks at corporate would work out together based on your feedback of what your unique location looks like. And the other aspect is they can use a number of different carriers, right? So the data remote folks use Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, right? So we can use one of those carriers. We can have dual SIM cards in the device to fail over. And largely, I tell people, what do you use for your smartphone, and does it work? And that's kind of a quick and easy way of being able to determine what a cell plan might look like, right? But that's part of the service as well, right? So the reason that I was telling you that we do the connectivity and the SD-WAN and all the other services is because if you think about what POTS in a box is doing, right? There's an internet connection, there's a piece of hardware, and there is a voice or a specialty line application, and then there's a professional service, right? So potentially 4 different departments that would be touching this, we're able to kind of handle that complexity in a very simple way and provide this service to you. Let me see. So how do we gather all of that intel, right? We have been fine-tuning this, the project management aspect of POTS over broadband, and I mean POTS in a box. It requires some initial information from you, the customer. We have a questionnaire that we send out that gathers some initial intel around, if you're doing it on a alarm panel, right, the make and model of the panel. We have a library of information on certain manufacturers because we have to configure the box in a certain way. And so as we learn, we add to our library so that the next install is smoother than the last, right? We continually to fine tune this. We have a project management team. If you have a large scale, if you've got many locations and it requires a project manager on our side, right? You have weekly calls with them um, that consists of reviewing a tracker of where each order is, where each device is to be shipped, where they are in terms of the procurement and pre-configuration. Right? We want this to be as easy as possible, because we know that copper decommissioning as a whole has been a largely disruptive event in our industry. And from a timeline perspective, this is kind of what we look like from order entry, right? Sort of internal processes here at SpectroTel, getting our project resources in order. We're calling it 1 to 2 days. We have a kickoff call. We review the order. We have a site survey, right? So part of our installation is a 2 truck roll installation. We found this is the best way to ensure success. And the first one is a site visit, making sure that we understand where the 66 block is, where the antennas should be placed, all of those events. And if there's any inside wiring needs, right, like a basic installation would cover a cross connect, but we do have professional services. So if any sort of extension needs to happen, we can take care of that. There's a time and materials fee for that, but it's all it can all be handled under one roof, which is a real nice benefit. So we're looking at an all-in at around 15 days for a POTS in a box solution. Granted, that's without a port, right? That's a new number estimate, right? Ports generally extend that out maybe another 5 to 7 days. It's dependent on the underlying carrier. And so my kind of hack on that would tell you, if you don't need to port, an elevator line, I would suggest that you request new numbers for them. It just is a little bit speedier. And I'll just give you an idea of some of the larger installations that we've had, right? And these are kind of typical clients for SpectroTel, right? We do a lot of work in the retail space and in the franchise space. Certainly, this product is really attractive for those in the real estate world, right? If you own a building, there's a certain amount of POTS lines that you have to have for, fire alarm, elevator, name 3 other specialty line requirements. So we're looking at, call it 10 lines per building. We have customers that are large real estate investment trusts or property managers, and this falls under their purview. And so we are able to, in some cases, in this one in particular, what we do is we do first a billing migration. We just migrate all the POTS lines to our billing, right? And in a lot of cases, we're saving them some money right off the bat. And while they're under our umbrella, then when we do the audit, right, we have the CSR pulled, we find out where they are, and we say, great, you should use these 2 services, this one for specialty, this one for voice, or whatever the combination happens to be. It just allows us to be a really helpful consultant in matching what is the POTS line being used for. Is it still required? Can it be decommissioned and replaced with something else? Or is it okay to use SIP analog? Is it a native SIP line? Can we get away with POTS over broadband based on the location, right? All of those things that I talked about earlier are really helpful tools to have, so that we can fit the best solution with the customer's need. It tends to always be a mix of those things. It's never just rolling out, POTS over broadband to 10 locations. It's been different every time. And so being able to be a real partner in that case has been super helpful. So look, that's the broad overview of the service and specifically the pots in a box. I think if we're here to kind of entertain some questions or some comments or anything that you want to drill into a little bit deeper. Yeah, we're happy to get started on that.
So Sean, if someone was interested, let me turn my camera back on. So if someone's interested, what information do they need to bring to the conversation?
Yeah. So initially, if you know these are used for voice or these are used for alarm, right? That's a great starting point. The address, of course, right? Because we'll qualify it to see if it can be used for one of the wired connections, if that's something you want to entertain. And then, we'll kind of go through this exercise and say, do you want to use your wired connection? Do you want to have an LTE backup? Do you want LTE to be the primary? And kind of talk through what all of those things mean. But a great starting point is if you have that information. And if you don't, we'll start with an invoice and we'll say, great, does it make sense to start with migrating them and then doing the audit that way, right? Those are kind of the two ways, Joe, that we basically get started.
Okay. All right, great. And by the way, Sean, as you know, corporate data has been doing the site surveys for situations that are in the New England region. We can
So helpful, Joe. So helpful. Your site surveys are so detailed that we've actually started using some of them internally. I should share, and I'll share that with you. Actually, I'll show you the document that we send out with text, and because I don't think there's much overlap. I think yours is actually you've been super robust. So thank you.
Perfect. All right. So pretty simple. Come to the conversation with what you're looking to replace, whether you have broadband there or not, I would imagine. Can this solution use LTE only? Can it only work over LTE?
Yes.
Or does it have to have an internet connection?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and best practice is to have, two methods of access. So whether that's, a SIM card and a wired or two SIMs, but yeah, they can absolutely run on LTE only.
Okay. And if for some reason, I would imagine maybe internet hasn't been brought in, there has to be some type of a build out. I'm thinking maybe more new locations, but I'm sure it could happen for certain situations where internet's just not available yet.
Yeah, Joe, there's two great fits for that. One is like a construction trailer. We see that fit a lot, right? And the other one is we have more than a few municipalities, and they've got sort of remote water meters, or they've got places where, and a true story, it qualified for POTS over broadband, and I placed an order for that, and the construction cost that came back, because there's a water meter in the middle of the woods, we quickly pivoted to an LTE solution.
Got it. Okay. Christy, you had a question, comment, statement?
Just does it make sense for people to come with the idea of what they're looking to back up as well? If it's not just an alarm panel or, phone systems or other services could also run on a service like this.
Yeah, listen, this is just a kind of what we see most of the time. I have had people use this as a third way into a local area network, right? It's a way they sort of backdoor into a firewall this way. And we actually, we had to Visio out how it was going to work. But yeah, there's a number of different applications, and really it's limited to what you're using a copper POTS line for today. And then if it's not something that's sort of a use case that we've seen before, we'll take it to the lab and make sure it works out. That's where Craig gets excited, and and we make sure that we can replicate it, right? But yeah, great question, Christy. There's
Yeah, I
a
mean,
ton of different things. Yeah.
I've had customers where, we were, just looking at the alarm lines, but they also had electrical meters in the same area that the blocks were in, and they needed a Wi-Fi signal that they couldn't get because it was all concrete. But the Pots in a Box unit has a little Wi-Fi AP in it, so we turned that on, and they were able to attach those electrical meters just for monitoring onto that Wi-Fi AP. So yeah, there's all sorts of different things you can do with it. Now that said, it's not meant for like industrial grade routing for that kind of stuff. We wouldn't recommend putting a ton of traffic through it plus the Pots and Box. We kind of focus it mostly on the pot signs, but it certainly does have additional features and things.
Great, awesome. Any questions from any other folks while we have the session open? Ed, I usually get at least one question from you, Ed. I'm shocked.
Yeah, no, I don't. I've gone through a consolidation of my POTS lines, and I'm just now looking to move on. Eventually, once I'm able to move off of that vendor, to get rid of some of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I unfortunately just completed that consolidation.
Yeah. Ed, to your point, when we do that initial audit that I talked about, that initial migration, we try to keep that term on like a month to month, because a lot of that discovery is going to be, man, I don't need 10% of these,
Yep.
So.
Excellent. All right, great, folks. We'll let people get back to their day. Appreciate your time. Sean, Craig, any last comments?
No, just appreciate everyone's time, and if feel free to reach out to either Sean or myself if you ever have any questions or opportunities you can swing our way.
Yep.
Yeah.
And obviously, everyone on this call has been invited through email. So just respond through that email if you have any other questions, and we'll get those questions answered, or a call set up so we can dive into further detail for you.
Joe, I'll share kind of a light piece of this presentation that you can send out as a follow-up.
Yep, excellent. We also recorded it, so Christy will be sending. We'll be sending the link, correct, Christy? All right, fantastic. So